All right. Good morning, PGA of America members and associates, and welcome to the 2025 Coaching and Teaching Summit, presented by OnForm and Rapsodo. We're excited for a great morning here at the Quarry Golf Course. A big thank you to Miguel Amaya and Dustin Burrell, the team here, for hosting us today, putting together some great F&B offerings, and just opening their doors to us. You know, the Member Services Committee reinstated this program in 2019. This will be our 7th consecutive year running it. Each year we've gotten a little larger, and I'm excited to say this will be our biggest coaching and teaching summit since the revitalization. So thank you all for being here today. We've got a great day of education and looking forward to learning a lot. I want to say a big thank you again to OnForm and Rapsodo for sponsoring the event. We're going to hear from both of them today, but what we do wouldn't be possible without our amazing partners. So make sure to stay high if you didn't get a chance this morning, and if not, stop by and see them during one of the breaks. Well, I know everybody didn't show up to hear me talk, so we're going to get started this morning. Our first speaker, you know, you've probably seen his name on the bottom of one of your golf clubs before, but give me a big round of applause for Roger Cleveland, the founder of Cleveland Golf. Test, can you hear me back on the microphone?
Can you hear me? Yeah. Speak up. I want you to all know I moved a year and a half ago to Texas. I'm a Texan. And I'm about to marry a Texan lady, so I really will be a Texan.
Welcome home.
We can talk later. I have a little quote. I'm going to talk to you about what I'm doing now and my love, and that's the short game, wedges. Talk about some of the misconceptions they have out there with the bounce. Talk about bounce, how to measure bounce. But I got a quote. I was over in Sunnydale, in England, and I saw Paul McGinley at bunker. And he said, "Roger, come here." So I went over and he says, "Take a look at this wedge." He says, "Yeah, it was some wedge." And he says, "See the leading edge?" And he says, "That's the devil." And he says, "See the soul?" And he says, "That's religion, and we all need more religion." So the quote from Paul is that you got to use that soul and understand how to use it. Okay? So there's a lot of manufacturers these days don't quite represent, when they stamp a number on the bottom of a sole, what the bounce actually is. And there's a way to measure that very quickly. It takes 10 seconds to measure any wedge that you have in your shop or in your bag. Okay? And typically, lot wedges go from anywhere from, depending upon the configuration, I'll talk about that in a minute, but they'll be low at 8 to high as 18 or 20 in a lot wedge. But it's based upon the configuration of the sole, how wide it is, how narrow, relief from the heel and toe. So they're quite complicated geometries in the sole, based upon conditions and technique. And I want to later on talk about technique, because I'm very supportive of one technique. And as a matter of fact, the pro at LA Country Club, Roy Sweeney, and I developed a pitching aid that I'll show you that was on the table there, that enables you to reduce your radial, reduce setting, which is the way that you see Stricker and Jason Day and Scheffler and all these pros now that pitch the ball with very little set. They have speed and rotation. So we'll talk about that. But first of all, here's the device that I have. It's by Golf Mechanics. I can pass this around. And what you do, you take you all should have one in your shop. because it just eliminates confusion. You put one of the arms perpendicular to the score line, the other right on the middle section of the bounce. It's easy, you can see it. It reads the number, you subtract that from the loft, and that's your bounce. What did that take? 10 seconds. And it'll say, some wedges that manufacturers will say 4, if you know what I mean. That has 18 degrees of bounce. Okay. But bounce is a combination of width and aim. Okay, depending on if you have a very narrow sole, like that 4, you can see it, it's very narrow, but it has a lot of bounce. It's presented early, and it's really ideal for certain conditions, and it's developed on the tour we all have it. And the other thing I should announce that I'm, as of this year, back with Cleveland Golf, which is really fun for me to be back there. I started the company in 1979, but they were kind enough to say come back and do some consulting, which I'm not pleased to do. So that's been fun. So there's like 4 basic geometries on soles. The standard, which has the sole, the same bounce all the way across. There's one that has a little heel relief where you can open up, get under the bottle a little bit. There's one that's wide, and there's one that's like a triple sole. It has a lot of bounce, early, very narrow, and it's like a chamfer, then a little bounce. So you'll see all these things, but you have to, depending upon your technique, you have to decide, and your conditions, decide what to do. Then I'd like to talk to you about what I like to do in fitting. And when I do some work with different tournaments where we would give wedges away and I would fit the people. And I'd like to talk to you about that because you all fit. And I have my protocol, what I like to do because I don't have a lot of time with the student or with the person. So I'll talk about that. Just look at my notes here. So, in fitting a wedge, or the technique I like to use in fitting a wedge, when I see most amateurs, I see as, or most amateurs, not all amateurs, thank goodness, but most amateurs miniaturize a big swing and to hit a little shot. And what that means is they have a lot of set, a lot of viscoc, a lot of radial deviation, it's called. And so I'm trying to reduce it. So, but if you don't have a lot of time and when you're fitting somebody, you have to look at that first. If they're steep, it invites you to give them a lesson, which typically I end up doing on these occasions. But the less set you have, you have a swing that is wide, you expose more loft, more bounce, and it encourages you, when you have less set, to rotate. That's your speed. When you have a lot of set, you actually have to stop your body and release the club head, and the leading edge, like McGinley said, is not your friend, so you bottom out different places. So the ideal technique, in my opinion, is getting your sternum ahead of the ball, really reduce your setting. We have a device that you saw at the beginning of the pitch lock I mentioned to you that reduces this. Easily goes on your trail hand. We have them left-handed for lefties. We have different sizes. And it's really, you put your forefingers through here so you have tactile feel in your fingers, your thumb here. You wrap this around. So, yeah, get some shots with it. It's a try device. You get 8, 10 shots, take it off, and you'll start to create some muscle memory of reduced breathing. Okay? And what that does, you wonder where your speed comes in, and then you'll start to rotate. And you really can get some nice consistent shots. And this little color is an indicator of when most amateurs, when you take it back, they don't rotate their arms. They and if you see that, you've not rotated. You have to rotate your arms. No setting, no radio, but rotate your arms. And that keeps your width in as much locked as you want on the club. So it's pretty simple device. And we have a special discount on those today if you want to look at it. The other thing I'm working on as well, again in the short game, there's a company called Terra Forza, which is a shaft company here locally actually. They're made by True Temper, the shafts. But they are really full swing product that's embedded, the software is embedded in Swing Catalyst. If you have force plates, and it fits you in about 3 swings, that's terrific. But what I'm doing is taking advantage of their software and developed a wedge shaft that has a certain EI curve that gives you a lot of feel. But I counterweighted this, so the weight of the shaft, or the club, the weight of the shaft is about 145 grams. And what it does is helps you release the head. And what the depth of this shot also is dragging the handle. You got to release the head around you. So this helps you do it. This is just coming out, and you'll see that. We have 3 shafts in there, fitting into log, sand, and your gap. And there's counterweight in your gap and your sand. So what you do is release. So, do you have any questions with the bounce? Let me take this and send this around. And if you will take a picture with your phone, you ought to get that. Does anybody have any questions?
What's the name of your right arm device?
It's called pitch lock.
Sir?
Pitch lock. There's a
Lock?
pitch lock.
Okay, thank you.
There's a pamphlet up there. There's a QR code. There's 2 QR codes. One's on the discount. One's on cheat sheet. Pretty good. Yes.
Could you tell us about your experience with players switching bounces depending on conditions, depending on grass styles, or Bermuda versus Zoysia? Do you see people interchanging the bounces throughout the year, or does someone really hold to one bounce and love it?
Usually they stay with one. The technique is sound enough and confidence is developed in that one. They see a window that they launch at and so forth, that they can turf interaction. What is new in material in wedges that happened this year, or really last, is that Cleveland, there's an engineer, metals engineer there, a young kid, who wasn't satisfied with the material that was been used for 60 years, and that material is called 8620. It's a high carbon, no alloy steel, and everybody uses it. To this day, everybody uses it. But he messed around and developed a material. The problem is, in the testing, all the testing that were done with groove, when it rusts, when the wedge rusts, you would think it would really create more spin, and actually degrades the spin. And so what this material does, it's raw, so it's non-glare. It has really a nice patina. It's a little softer than 8620, which is like a, I mean, 8620 is like a forging 1020. And so it's soft, but the groove stays pristine longer. So you have more spin and that window stays longer.
We get a lot of new golfers at the club, and would you build someone's technique around one specific bounce since they're not switching bounces? Where would you start someone off before you give them a technical golf lesson if they didn't know the same wedge?
Well, I think that if they didn't know this, well, then they're starting out, what kind of a player is the person?
Intermediate, beginner. You're trying to build their technique around one wedge, a Cleveland wedge, if they had a choice.
Well, is the person strong or weak or old or woman?
What are you doing
I
with
mean, I don't mean that derogatorily, but most women aren't as strong, and therefore they can't hit a 60-degree very far. So I kind of recommend that they, I mean, the 60 or 56s or 54s have sole geometries that are beautiful, and they can get out, and that's enough loft to get out of most bunkers. And they can, it's more usable. Put a hybrid in, rather than a 60. But if the person's always right, okay, so if they have a 60, they want a 60, or fit a 60. Or if they heard about it, their friends and so forth, you have to do that. But you start with, look at the technique, it develops into a nice opportunity for a lesson in teaching them proper technique, in my opinion. But they have to have bounce, and anywhere from, in the lob wedge, I mean, I use 12 right now, and I'm fairly decent, and thank goodness my long game is getting short as I get older and start, as they say, I can listen to my drives land, but I can get it up and down, and I can make some pars every once in a while. But it's technique, so it's fitting, it's on the conditions that you have. If you have firm bunkers, you gotta watch how much bounce you have. But going back to the pros, they won't change, they won't change the sole very much. They'll try something, they'll try and do it. I was working with some guys at US Open this year, and but they weren't about to change for that term. But if they go to, overseas to the Open Championship and the conditions are really hard over there, they might go down with the highest law. But typically what the RNA does is put softer bunkers, there's softer sand over there. So there's a trade-off. So what you do is you use your sand wedge, which typically has more bounce than your lob wedge, historically, and that should, because of different shots, fuller shots that you're hitting with that. You hit the ball first, typically, with your sand, unless you're pitching with it on a lower trajectory shot. And then your gap has a 10 to 12 degree bounce, but your sand wedge is anywhere from 12 to 16, at least historically, for the shots that you demand.
Would you share some of your experiences working with Tom Watson?
Unfortunately, I have the greatest respect for Tom Watson, but I haven't had a chance to work much with him personally. In his career, he was in his height of his career, I think he was with Ram, and they had a wedge that really kind of reminded me of the old R20. It was really round, had a tight radius, and a shape that wasn't that pleasing to me, but obviously worked. But he was a great gentleman, so I never had a chance. I've had some others, the first wedge I did was an 85, and it was my fourth set of irons, so I called it the 485, so I'm really quite clever doing that. The problem with trying to name names, you have to register them, and that's costly to register. And it was easy to have numbers, so that was the 485. But that was a different veg that was at the time when Tom Kite was going through analysis with on this five-bar efficiency. He couldn't hit the ball long enough for 5 bars. So he was working with Dave Pelz to work on a system where he could lay out to a certain distance, and it really popularized the 60-degree. That's how that came. So at 45 to 60 became really popular. Langer used it, Pavement used it. It won Curtis Strange won a couple opens with it. So I had the chance to work with those guys. Curtis wanted me to take the Cleveland off and put the Brigger on it, but I wouldn't do it. But he still used it.
Curious about the swing weight with the counterweight and also the length of the hosel. It seems like a longer hosel than normal.
This is the RTZ, which they did extend the hosel a little bit with that. It raises the CG, helps the spin, moves the weight a little bit heel over, but they have a little zip cord section in the heel that moves the weight. There's all kinds of weight movement. What was your question again?
What is the swing weight?
Oh, swing. Well, obviously, if I'm weighting this, okay, the swing weight, it goes down appreciably. Goes down to about a C8, okay, but you don't feel it. You want to release it. First of all, you don't want to take the club around you. You want to rotate it so you can get it around. You want to finish with the club low, put pressure on, like Peter Cowan talks about releasing the head and rotating. And that way you keep loft on, and your sternum stays ahead. Your bottom of your arc is ahead of the ball, has to be. And you're entering the ball before the ball, actually, because you're shallow with less step. That's how the guys create the speed, and you can speed consistency with your width with the rotation. You're just rotating about the forward hip. Yes?
What about your design with Phil Mickelson, the young guys? How did that come to be, really?
He's, as you know, a character. I cleaned that up. No, I have a nice relationship with him. But the most aggressive short game I ever experienced was Phil. We did I was with Callaway for 28 years, so we did a test. He wanted to get a groove that was, we did a lot of studies, getting it conforming within the USG, at the same time getting it to be a spinning machine, okay? And so we did this groove, and he hits a shot from me to the gentleman in the back there, which is what, 20 yards, 25 yards. He swings about 90 miles an hour, 85, and it gets there, and there's a practice facility there in Carlsbad. Hits the green and backs up about 30 feet, okay? And he looks down at the club, and there's white golf ball, threads coming up, and he says, that's my Mac Daddy groove. And that name stuck, and we called that wedge that came up thereafter, the Mac Daddy. But he was interesting. The high toe or the full toe, he came to us and said he wanted to have he felt like he would take a normal sized head and go under the ball totally in rough. So he wanted some extra land. So I took a wedge, cut it in half, and welded on another section and took a Sharpie and round out the shape that I wanted. I had to take some weight off of that to bring it to what he wanted. That D5 was about at least 3/4 long, big grip, he's a big guy. And so I took it to him at the PGA Championship at Valhalla with half the face, no grooves, and half the face with grooves to show it, and I put a Sharpie to indicate where the grooves would be and so on. And because if you had two different grooves on the face of the club, you'd be non-conforming. So I wanted to have him hit some shots, and I got it to Wednesday of the tournament, and he put it in play. He put an exhibition together and he was hitting these shots. It was really good. And he actually used it, and he and Ricky Fowler came in one shot behind this Irish gentleman. Anyway, that's the genesis of the photo. And then he said, well, put grooves all the way out. So we did. Yes, sir.
Kind of a silly question, but who's the best you've seen with a wedge? And what do you see technically, what they do well, or he or she do well technically?
There's several in that category. One would be Phil. He created a lot of speed. He had a lot of set, but he dumped it real fast. Okay, and when he came through, he was not releasing it here. He would release it really with his body. So he had a lot of speed, but the technique from here, but that was thousands and thousands of shots when he was 10 years old or something. I had a chance to be with Silly. He was magical. Sergio Garcia was amazing. I remember, and a fellow Texan here, Trevino, was pretty good. Okay, he would take the ball, and of course the balls would move a little bit more in those days, but I would send him wedges all the time, and when I went out to tour, he would show me different shots. He'd drop a wedge that was 40 yards, he'd draw it 20 yards. Do all kinds of things. So he was extremely talented. Mostly used 56s. And during the old days, it was Tom Kite that kind of popularized the 60. Also, architecture changed, higher faces and so forth started changing. You needed some higher loft.
Did you ever get a chance to see what wedge makeup Ballesteros had?
Yeah, he used 56.
Okay.
Yeah, he typically used an old Dynapower. When I went out to tour, I started at Cleveland. I started with persimmon woods in 79, 80. And when I went out to tour, everybody was using the old, now that was 80, 57, 58 Dynapowers. Okay? They're old, but the shape and everything, the sole was beautiful on it. And a little bit of offset, really nice transition through the hosel and the par area, really beautiful. But when I started working in designing the wedge, I didn't want to copy that. I took some emphasis from that, especially in the hosel area, but I wanted a different shape. So that's where I started with the 45. And the tour was my test center, so I went out and got some great feedback from them and saying this, and I have kind of an eye to help that. I know what I wanted. So I was very fortunate to have the tour. There's some great people at Cleveland. I was telling a story. We had a guy, Don Shavorsky, that was devoted to colleges and kids, and we thought, well, the kids are going to be, if they don't go on tour, they're going to be head pros, and they're going to be influencers at clubs. And he was right. So that some NC2A championships, we had like 90% participation on a wedge with the guys. It was really good, really fun. You did it with a lot of help.
What balls do you carry in your bag? What is?
I carry RTZ. I have a 60, 55, I have 5-degree increments, 50. But I just have been trying, there's a new set of Swiss-on game improvement irons. There's 2 sets that are coming. And I'm having the privilege of playing with one of them now. It's really good. It looks like a Tour iron, and it's more game improvement, which I needed. Somehow I'm not hitting it as high as I used to be. I think that's speed, technique, unfortunately, that's speed. But these are good. Yeah, so I use a pitching wedge from the set, and I go back and forth. There's a pitching wedge obviously in the wedge set. I love the shape of that, so I use that at the gap and all the way up to 60. But so that's an RTZ. There's a CB, which is cavity back, which is fairly new. It's about a month old. That's the silhouette, the profile of the dress is a little bit bigger than the RTZ. That's beautiful. It has a shape of the sole that's fabulous for somebody that needs a little help. And so I might be going there because it's beautiful. And that, they have all kinds of moss in that. And it's a Z material, which the spin will be amazing, and the feel. You should look at that if you have a chance. CBZ. Yes.
When you're fitting players, what is the main contributor to deciding what kind of balance you should be playing?
Technique.
Technique.
Technique first. If you have good technique, it depends upon your conditions, firm conditions, soft conditions, and bumpers. If you have that combination with firm surrounds and soft bumpers, that's a tough one. You've got to start using your wedge that has a higher balance with 56, like they do when they get to the open. Or, in the short shots, you obviously open up the face, which creates more balance. Balls. One's very long. I've not had a chance to play with that. Spins less. I like to spin around the greens. They have one that's excessive spin around the greens. I want to do one in the middle, location ball. And that's played quite a bit on the tour. It spins. And I played, I don't know if I play Oak Hills once in a while, so I went to a yellow ball so I could find it. And see it, actually, in the air. That's the other thing that goes. So, anything else?
Do you use a launch monitor or any type of device to measure?
Pardon?
Do you use a launch monitor or monitor?
When I started, we did the home launch monitors, but you could see windows, launch windows, and so I'm talking to the young gentleman back there, and if he's kind enough, I will be buying one of his, because that's a reasonable price for that, if that's what it says. I'm sure. Technology today is pretty amazing. But yeah, that would have been helpful, for sure. Tack handle. But again, what I've seen is the technique has changed, and it really is easy for me to do it, okay? And I can't hit it, like I used to. But around the green from 40 yards, I can hit it. The person can hit it 40 yards. I can have a good short game, and with good technique, and it's fun for them. It's fun for me. I love teaching that, encouraging people to teach that. If you have a chance, take a look at least scan that QR code and go into some of what we talked about. Yes?
Well, I just had a question, with fitting wedges, I was always taught back in the day, determine if they're a digger or a scooper. Help determine proper balance. Like,
Typically, when you're, either of those two, you're trying to lift the ball by rotating your right shoulder back, and you probably have too much set. You typically don't have low rate when you're doing that, so.
when fitting though, so a lesson would.
Okay, if you're fitting a person, you don't have the time to work with them, give them high bounce. Absolutely. Yeah, bounce is your friend. Paul McGinley. We all need more religion.
Correct.
But no, true, if you don't have much time, and they're steep, give them what they need. And the chances are, unless they really want to take some time and take a lesson and learn, they'll do what they've done all their life. They'll put their hands forward and tee locked and all that. So give them as much bounce as possible. Or a very wide sole with high bounce. So, the RTZ has three, 15 to 60 category, the long range category. You have low, medium, high. So I would just give them the high, which has about 18 degrees of bounce. Nice, pretty wide sole, very forgiving for that person. And it's cambered, it's not flat. There's a radius. Yes, sir.
Can I ask you about the design concept on the old VAS irons?
On the VAS?
On the old VAS?
I didn't think that question would be asked. VAS. That was commonly referred to as garden tools. I got into persimmon woods because it's a traditional shape, and there was a wood maker and we started doing it. So I love the classic traditional, like the Srixon irons today is magnificent. So that being said, I had sold the company to a ski company called Rossignol Ski. We probably all ski on some Rossies, and they brought a guy in that was very aggressive to run the company. This guy actually worked for Solomon, and Solomon bought TaylorMade 3 years prior to this. So he was very aggressive and had some bonus, things that he could click off if he grew sales, and Payne was doing great, and he wanted something that was wild looking. And I was working with something to reduce more stability of the hit around the shaft. So there's a rule in golf: the heel cannot be more than 5/8 of an inch behind the center line of the shaft. So I started messing with that and with weight distribution, and with the sole. And then we wanted to so the hosel would not interfere as much. And so we raised the hosel to raise the CG because we're doing different things. We also thinned out the face because I have weight on the four corners of the head. The club is really quite good. And then this, again, we thinned out the center, and in skiing at that time there was a viscoelastic material, laminar, that they put on the top of the ski that reduced the chatter when you got into ice. And in skiing, you got to keep that edge on. And so we applied that to the sound, to the thin face. So that was the first time that ever was done for irons, and we licensed, Callaway, we licensed everybody that wanted to badge it. But the problem was we were coming coming out with this iron really quickly because he wanted to, he was very aggressive. And there was only one place that made this material. And we wanted a certain color. And it came out, when we saw it first, it killed me. It came out this light purple. And anyway, we couldn't go back and redo the color. We didn't have the time to do it, so we launched the product. And I remember going out to tour with that. It was pretty hard. The pavement story was fun. I mean, I shipped him the set of irons and told him about it, and he lived in Texas at the time, in Dallas, and probably still does. Right? Anyway, we sent him a set and started waited. A month goes by, so I finally called him and I said, I sent you this new product. What do you think? He says, oh, you mean that box in the garage? So he finally opened up the box and started playing it. Thought I lost my mind, but he won the Open that year. But he could really stable iron. And I was promptly sued, the company and myself personally, by the Ping Company, which is very nasty of them, because we were trading on some proprietary IP. We won, so it was good. But that's the story of the VAS. It got out of hand. He rushed it. I wanted the more traditional. We had a Frenchman designing that one with some of my technology. Any other question?
Are they going to be using the material that you were talking about in the new wedges that are coming out of Cleveland? You were mentioning a different material. Are they going to use those in the new wedges that are coming out of
Yes.
Cleveland?
Yeah. Everything with the Z,
Mm-hmm.
they're out now. That material was out last year.
Okay.
Okay, with RTZ. Now the cavity back that's just coming in has the Z. Terrific material. You can get it chromed, but that's what it looks like. I've had this for a while. It just looks pristine. I clean it once in a while. Helps out your nerves clean. Yeah, it's real nice material. This young man, his name is Boeing, like in airplanes, Boeing Smith, and he's a character. It's fun. He's developing some stainless steel materials now that will be on the charts. There's some good stuff. I've had a chance to look under the hood with the R&D department, and there's some really spendy stuff. These two new game improvement irons you have to take a look at. If anything was lacking, it would be in the wood design. Drivers and fairway woods. Hybrids have been great, but I just drove a new driver that was really good looking and performed very well. Great sound. So some good stuff coming soon.
I was going to say,
From Cleveland.
when? Yeah.
That's
Say we got a senior and we put him in a set of irons and they're 70-gram senior flex graphite. It would be wise to put him in the same shafts in his wedges or not necessarily.
good question. Again, I think when you have you can, it makes sense to do that. But I like a little heavier shaft when you have to swing it 30 yards. I want some resistance. Ideally, if you have the ability, put it in the same shaft but heavier. If you can order it that way. This is kind of a better player concept. I think you have to have some pretty good technique to use this, but I exposed the guys at Briggs. I live out of Briggs Ranch, and both Derek and Mike are very good players, and they are scoring by this shaft. So we're getting some good feedback.
Is that
So, you know, if you can, a little here would be nice. But,
Is that shaft going to be in the fitting systems?
pardon me, yes,
The shaft that you have there, is that going to be in the fitting systems? Is that going to be available?
yes, ma'am. Yep. We're just coming out with that.
Okay.
A small little company that Terra Forza, but it uses ground effects, and it, if you have swing cat, I mean, we have our own plates, but it takes a person that's warmed up, it takes 3 swings, indicates a color, we do it by color, and it'll indicate a color. And typically, you put that color, if you have, let's say, a Tigos or TeoMade, you put that shaft in it with that color, and the person will pick up speed, most people. About a 70% chance with amateurs, that I found. If you're the 30%, okay, then what he has is perfect, or what she has is perfect. Because it's pretty accurate, because it's based upon about 8 values that they evaluate during the swing, and it takes 3 swings to do it. It'll only take the same color every time. And it's now embedded, if you have swing cap, it's embedded in that software. So you really just push a button and it'll indicate a color.